Here's Johnny.
I'll be back.
And you will know my name is the Lord.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Groovy.
Well, we've lost James. MB doesn't know where he is.
I didn't try.
And I now hate Snowpiercer. Welcome to Box Office Pulp. I swear to God, I'm going to keep that intro.
The best podcast about movies you could ever download. Just the fucking professionalism here.
It's better than last time where I couldn't even say the title of the movie without laughing my ass off. Alright, this time I went to the trouble of writing an intro, kind of, but I'll wait till James gets back.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, are you going to start the episode while he's away?
I like how occasionally we come across as really articulate and smart and say interesting things, then we just don't care.
And then it turns into, fuck, why are we doing this episode? Weren't we supposed to do the gray?
Fucking baby eating, right?
Baby eating, finger-licking chicken.
Just,
Japanese Captain America.
Class
Okay,
war.
so
that's all we're going to say over and over again. Class war.
Class war. Actually, I was going to make some comments about babies, but I should save those for the show.
Yeah, save the baby comments for the show.
I gotta save my gold for, a rainy day.
I don't even remember what my name is at this point.
Millifred. Manny.
I'm okay with Manny, actually.
Mortimer. Mordecai.
Mordecai, I'm okay with. Looking forward to that movie.
Maleficent.
Madagascar.
Oh, that's just silly.
Mumps. Mumford.
Moops.
Thinking up
Michael
M-words,
Irons.
guys?
The Moops.
There's no such thing as the moops.
It says right here, the Moops. That's how I want to start the episode now, actually.
Edit point. Hey, everybody, James is back.
And now we can start the show proper. And he came a-running. Anyways, today, if you haven't gathered, and if I've edited out the part where I said we're doing Snowpiercer, we're covering Snowpiercer today. Joining us from the very back of the train, please welcome James Lewis. The back of the train is a urinal.
Well, I mean, tell me that that's not canon.
I can't. Next up, a man who does, in fact, wear a shoe on his head. MB.
I can balance it really well.
You're doing fantastic. Fantastic work. And lastly, we have an expert with us today who can answer our baby-related questions. Mike, can you confirm that baby does actually taste best?
So fucking good.
I had always imagined it to be.
It's glorious.
On a more serious note, if you look at, the way we prepare traditional meals, normally it's the baby animal that's the most tender and delicious, like veal.
Yeah.
But I would assume baby human is about the same. Although...
I imagine it's only a little saltier than chicken.
Well, thinking about it, okay, babies have a lot of cartilage, right? They're more gummy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, one, it sounds good, you don't have to remove the bones, but two, that means it's extra chewy. You're gonna get, it's like having a lot of gristle on your steak. You don't want that.
Well, the bones are only partially developed when you think about it, so maybe they're a little,
A little chewy?
Yeah.
Well, you gotta remember the baby fat, I mean.
But there's too much fat, actually. I mean, you want a good marbling.
Well, that's just in how you prepare it, though.
Yeah.
You can take that out.
Well, what I'm saying is if you trim all the fat, you're left with very little meat.
Well, no, I mean, it depends on,
the baby?
the weight of the baby is.
Yeah, I'm glad this is how we're starting the episode.
Yeah, and then...
I really am.
You guys are freaks.
I was gonna bring up eating baby intestines, but we can just skip that.
Like tripe?
Yeah.
I'm really hungry right now.
So am I, actually. I want some barbecue, something. Well.
Some belly back ribs, if you say.
Ooh.
No! Puns are out of the context.
Baby back ribs, barbecue sauce.
I knew you'd sing that. That's why I said it.
I knew you'd sing that.
So Snowpiercer.
Snowpiercer. Box Office Pulp does not endorse eating babies. That's our legal
Box
disclaimer.
Office Pulp guy does.
Box Office Pulp would eat anything, even his own foot, if he could reach it.
Box Office Pulp isn't fit to lead. Box Office Pulp has 2 hands.
This is how we end the show.
You're right, okay.
This is not how we
Team!
Well, we're starting from the We're starting
Start from the back of the train.
so that we can make our way to the front, which is like the movie.
That's right, we're starting from the back of the train. Everyone!
Box Office Pulp guy is actually played by,
Ed Harris.
Yes.
Awesome. No, fuck this. Okay, we're doing this real. For real now. Why did we pick Snowpiercer? I genuinely have forgotten why we picked Snowpiercer.
Because it's a good movie, alright.
It's a great goddamn movie.
It was just released on Netflix, so we all just watched it like 3 weeks ago.
That is true.
Not everyone's a freak who buys his movies like you.
Hey man,
Also,
the government comes to take my Netflix away, I'll have all my discs.
You don't have Netflix for the government to take away.
Well, my roommate has it, I could just steal his.
It's like you can't have a backup for something you don't have.
Don't tread on me. Alright, I'm gonna tell you one thing I realized today, just because I don't know where else to fit this in the podcast. I realized that Allison Pill, the teacher, is Kim from Scott Pilgrim, and my mind was just fucking blown. Did you guys? I'm assuming you realized that when you watched the movie, because
yes.
I did not.
Yes.
Sweet.
Her hair was a different color, so to me it was a different person.
What?
Podcast on Snowpiercer, and that's your comment?
Like, there's a lot of stuff I enjoyed about the movie, like the Marco Beltrami score. That's pretty good.
That Chris Evans is also Captain America,
and he was also in Scott Pilgrim. Conspiracy? Maybe.
It all goes back to Scott Pilgrim.
And the character Edgar is named after Edgar Wright, who was the director of Scott Pilgrim. That is a fact, actually. Not making that one up. It's a keeper. That's a freebie. You can just hold on to that nugget.
And John Hurt's character is named Gilliam after Terry Gilliam, who is a director of movies. And what else is a movie? Scott Pilgrim.
What I'm saying is, we're going to talk about Scott Pilgrim now on Box Office Pulp.
I would love it if we actually used that as our intro to our Scott Pilgrim episode. Like, I'm game.
Like, we just have a fake cold open with a completely different movie.
April Fools, bitches!
We Kevin Bacon our way into another.
This is our From Dusk Till Dawn, man. No, we're seriously talking about Snowpiercer. We're seriously talking about Snowpiercer. Alright, I'm going to kick things off here. I'm going to talk about some of the things I really enjoyed about the film and why I wanted to talk about it for realsy this time. One of the most notable things about the film is definitely the cinematography. I mean, one thing that's really cool about the film is, let's go for something kind of heavy here compared to, making Scott Pilgrim jokes. The film always moves in a kind of left to right pattern. Like, if you notice the left, it would be like retreating to the back of the train, and camera actions to the right kind of represent moving forward. And so the characters are constantly moving over to the right on this train. And I thought that was a really simple visual way of representing the movie, but it's so powerful because it's clear. It's very concise. You can understand it easily. It's great visual language that so many other films manage to screw up or not even attempt to do.
And it's particularly good because with this film, you have an environment which constantly changes with each car.
Mm-hmm.
Like, each is vastly different from the other, and each specific section almost has its own language. So to keep something that's concise and something that has a rhythm to it within these very different places gives it, like, sort of a continuity, almost.
Right, which would be so easy to lose considering, like you said, each train is so different from the previous ones. It makes me think Snowpiercer make, like, a really fantastic video game. Like, each train could essentially be a level. And just like Mario, you can move to the right, and you can move to the left a little bit, but the screen won't retreat.
It'd be a beat 'em up.
Well, what if you do like the Pac-Man thing where you go to the right and then you appear at the left?
Whoa. We're talking trains here, man. That doesn't make any sense.
Hey, I've said this before.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense.
Snowpiercer is the best BioShock movie that's ever been made.
Don't make me sad that we're never going to get a real BioShock movie.
Yeah, you combine Snowpiercer with scenes from Frankenstein's Army, you've got your BioShock movie.
You're making me sad. Stop
Did
it.
someone do that?
No, actually, we could be the first.
Get on it, Andy.
Could you imagine fucking Chris Evans taking down a Big Daddy?
Oh, with a wrench.
And then we
shooting bees from his fingertips. Bees!
That is the greatest superpower of all time.
I think so. Man, what could have been? So yeah, the cinematography I think was just masterful. And I like that there are so many nonverbal cues in the film. Like, you can see characters kind of weighing options, and they manage to tell that without having to have any sort of inner monologue or anything. You can just see from panning left, right, or cutting back and forth that characters are looking at their choices and considering them.
Yeah, you tell that to Harvey Weinstein.
We can cut all
there
that
needs to
shit
be
out.
an opening text crawl read aloud by Lawrence Fishburne.
It's the only way.
It's nice to see that kind of Asian storytelling. I mean, the movie's super Korean, but there's not really tons of dialogue in Korean or Asian films. It's kind of nice to see that over here for once.
Yeah, a lot of the film is actually told through Evan's expressions, which is kind of amazing. Because he is just intense as hell in this movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the visuals are all even fantastic. Like you said, each room is so unique, and the way they show it off, like, how cool is it looking at the aquarium room? Or, the final engine room, how different each thing is, so you're constantly kind of surprised and drawn in by how different each room is.
Like, there's just... Each car of this could have been its own movie, almost. Like, it just kind of weirdly has this change of genre within this continuing narrative. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, it's a movie that you just find yourself never wanting to end. Like, you just want that to go on for 7 hours, and they go to this train, and then this train, and then this train.
How many trains are there? Nobody knows.
All the while you're trying constantly to figure out what the movie's actually about, because it makes you think it's about one thing and becomes something vastly different. Like, it seems like something where it's just, it's a basic class versus class film, The people want to get to the front of the train so they can have a better life, and so they don't have to live in poverty and eat these weird, like, protein bars made of bugs, and
Which
it's
we
really
only
actually
assume Soylent Green.
It's more of a morality tale, like a really, really darkly, morally gray area where it's really about just the kind of torment that Chris Evans' character went through to get where he is, and why he doesn't feel that he's a good leader, and why he doesn't feel he's deserving of even the most basic humanity. And it's really just kind of fascinating how the movie kind of dupes you into into taking this basic premise and making it completely about something else.
You kind of jump off that. That was something that occurred to me, the morality tale kind of framing for this story. And we're gonna go on a little tangent here. I'm gonna work some ideas out. We'll see how it goes. But
okay,
there's no stopping me now.
None of them. Please tell me none of them involve Scott Pilgrim.
No, not at all. Well, I mean, you can make it if we want. But what I was going to go into was, I know a lot of people look at the movie and just flat out deny it because it's kind of a ridiculous concept on the surface of it. The last of humanity is on...
Where's the science of this premise?
Exactly. The last of humanity is on a never-ending train ride. And that's how they avoid the apocalypse. And I think audiences right now are kind of conditioned to look at science stories or sci-fi looking stories as having some sort of hard realism to them. Like, on the surface, it should appear to make sense, or everything should have a neat, tidy explanation. It should be like, Christopher Nolan Interstellar type thing, where there's going to be exposition to explain every facet along the way.
Which always confuses me, because it's not like the average moviegoer has a fucking degree in science.
No, but everyone thinks they do, because they can go online and they can look something up, or they can watch the History Channel do a special talking about, the myth of the movie. So everyone thinks they're an expert.
They don't want an actual scientific explanation. They want pseudoscience said at them so that they can convince themselves that they're not watching some bullshit.
Exactly. It's like, if they wanted hard science, they would watch something more along the lines of Primer, and that would be very confusing. So they don't want hard science, but they want something that is a facsimile of hard science. So you have those kind of stories now. And you have stories that operate by that logic, where they're at least pretending to be realistic. And that's not what Snowpiercer is. On the other hand, you have fairy tale kind of logic, like a Guillermo del Toro film, where it'll flat out tell you, look, this is magic, it operates this way because fuck you. That's how it's gonna work. And you kind of have to nod your head and go, okay, sure, it's magic.
And then there are scenes like the fish cutting scene, where you just don't know what's happening.
true. But I mean, with the fairy tale stuff, you can buy into it because, it's fantasy. And if you're watching Game of Thrones, then you can buy into that because that's a different setting. It's not trying for science fiction, it's trying for fantasy. But with Snowpiercer...
It's like with Star Wars. It's not really something that makes any sort of logical sense, but it has this fairy tale-like quality to it.
Right. And to finally loop this back into the morality thing you mentioned, what I think Snowpiercer operates under is like an Aesop's fable style logic, where the points that are being made, the action that's on the film, doesn't matter and should not be taken as literal events. You should be taking them as all of an expansion of like a deeper metaphor or commentary on the lesson. So, why are they all on a train? Well, no, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and scientifically, why would you put them all on a train? Who knows? But we want to talk about how classes are separated, like on vehicles. So that's why that serves the plot. Why are there fish guys? I haven't worked that out, but I'm sure...
Korea.
Yeah.
But I feel like, there's some sort of deeper metaphorical connection. It's all fable logic, not fairy tale logic, not science logic, but its own kind of separate category that we need to start applying to more stories. Kind of like Drive. I feel like Drive also operates under that same type thing, except for they're more explicit about it by mentioning, the scorpion and the frog.
Modern audiences get very confused by metaphors.
Yeah.
Well, audiences just don't want to go on a journey anymore. They want to be handed everything.
Well, what I've noticed is people take their stories very seriously. Like, even if you mention something like, oh, in Star Wars, they're saying that these stories aren't canon anymore. And you know what? Why does that matter in any single way if they've destroyed the EU? It really doesn't, because you've still read those stories. They still have the same meaning and characters and everything. It's just some guy somewhere far away. Right, yeah, some guy far away pointed his finger and said, hey, these stories don't connect to these other stories. They can't control what you do in your head, but people get upset about this stuff. To them, it's like a real story. They take everything too literally. And so when you get to a film like Snowpiercer, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. Why is this like this? Why did this character do that?
No, this is real.
Right, yeah, they can't buy into that illusion, so the whole thing is garbage.
Yeah, well audiences have a hard time also adhering to other people's mentality and vision at times.
True.
Even when it's not like a mentality and vision of someone who's insane or something like that. They refuse to break out of their own little box, weirdly.
Well, it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from Grant Morrison, who said that when a little kid watches The Little Mermaid, they know that lobsters can't sing and dance. But whenever you show that to an adult, they want to know, well, why can that lobster talk? Is this a scientifically altered lobster? Is this a result of genetic engineering? How does this lobster talk? The lobster talks because it's a fucking story. It's not real.
And I think that's a problem with how people view movies now. Because we're getting so many things that are getting pushed into realistic, gritty setups, and it's like, why? We don't really need the story to be explained to us that way or shot that way just to make us feel more comfortable.
Well, going back to Star Wars, you have people debating, the physical pros and cons of a lightsaber with two little lasers on the side. It's like, how would that even work? That is unrealistic.
How would this laser sword work?
Yeah, how the same laser sword where it's somehow controlling the light to not go, into infinity.
People don't cut themselves on it constantly.
Yeah, if I had a lightsaber, I'd be dead instantly. I would lose my hands and I would trip over it. I would be so dead.
That's why you can only operate it if you've had that swamp training.
That's part of the EU, it doesn't count anymore, man.
The second you've lifted up an X-Wing, you can manipulate a lightsaber. But not until then.
You're not allowed one until that point. I guess, and part of the point for me is, the first time I watched Snowpiercer, I got to the ending. And spoilers, the train crashes and they're in the snow.
Spoilers, Snowpiercer dies.
Snowpiercer, in fact, dies. Along with apparently everyone else on the train, leaving 2 people left of humanity. So you would assume... Yeah, so you'd assume humanity goes extinct. That's the problem, though. I'm looking at this from a very literal standpoint of what happens in the movie. Like, logistically, there's 2 people left who have no experience in the real world or in snow.
And there's a polar bear.
Yeah, with no food, resources, or skills, they will be dead very shortly. And if not, there's only 2 of them left. They're not going to live forever. Human race is doomed. And that is definitely not the point. Like, I am completely looking past the intentions of this ending. And I guess...
Yeah, I think actually my first reaction to it was just jokingly saying to... I think it was either Mike or James that just said, so the polar bear just ate them, right? But, like, at the same time, I knew exactly what it was going for. Like, I knew that it was supposed to represent some sort of hope that because they were seeing something that was alive, clearly, that there was a chance for humanity too, and they would rebuild. Like, even though it wasn't logistically possible, it was about the story, just kind of saying, look, there's a chance.
Right. And there's the whole thing with the train, like, the whole time they're moving left to right. Like I mentioned before, it's always moving to the right. It's that progress. You gotta get to the front of the train. But it's not sustainable. Eventually you're gonna hit the front of the train. And so when they hit that, instead of going to the back and just going left and right forever, they escape the train. They leave the system entirely. And, I mean, if we're looking at the train as some sort of class system or monetary system or a way of sustainability that's not working, saying that you're leaving is basically saying you're going to find a new way that's completely different and independent from what existed in the past.
Yeah, that's what I like about the ending, how it very clearly states there's no way to game a corrupt system.
Yeah.
It's like you can't jerry-rig the system to work for you. All you can really do is tear it down and build something better. Well, I will say, it's going to be hilarious when Bong Joon-ho comes out and says, no, the ending was about how it is now the polar bears' time to rule the earth.
That's what the sequel's going to be.
Snowpiercer 2. Snowpiercer with a Vengeance. Electric Boogaloo.
Dawn of the Planet of the Polars.
But it's also interesting to look at Ed Harris's character in terms of his philosophy, how he's utterly convinced this is the only way that humanity can function. If they have a population control that is kept in an order, like, it's robotic, but at the same time, you can see where his logic is coming in.
Right.
It just is horribly represented because you have people murdering each other left and right, and he's just kind of oblivious to all that while he's eating a steak.
Yeah, from his point of view, he's not a bad guy. He's just making the system work however it has to work. And it actually gets results. The train is operating perfectly until the point where it crashes. Like, it's doing exactly what they need it to do. The right numbers are there. The system is working.
Yeah, as long as you don't care about the other people.
Right, yeah.
Which, again, is a pretty depressing metaphor for how our world works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot of layers to just not only how the train works, but how the people in charge, like, try to work it into their heads, and how the people who have suffered view it. Like, especially, like, Chris Evans, who, his character just is really just kind of a monster revealed to be just kind of this horrible human being, but, like, his idea of what he should do is to kill the guy at the front, and that's what's going to save everybody, and that's what's going to, change the system. But really, ultimately, he's faced with a very easy temptation that kind of puts a stop to any notion he has of doing what he set out to do for all these years. And in the end, he just kind of doesn't. In the end, he doesn't really win, which is interesting. It's like, it's not a tale of anybody winning or losing. It's about something horrible happening and it just kind of needing to take its course and run its end. Like, it just kind of having to finally go away and not be the way things are anymore.
I also thought it was kind of interesting, on an aside, that Chris Evans essentially gains his humanity by losing a part of himself. Like, he has to sacrifice his arm so he can finally be like everyone else on the train who has lost a limb. So he comes complete by breaking up.
Yeah. Well, you can't be a part of the human race without losing the bit of yourself that everyone has to lose eventually.
Fuck you, I'm an island.
Getting philosophical here, but yeah. It's the pain that all of us feel that unites us and makes us the human race. You can't be a human and be unscathed.
Yeah.
Which is like, what you look for, look at Wilford, who, is completely unscathed and has not suffered in the slightest with this apocalypse, but he's isolated in an engine room with his robe and his steak, and that's his entire life.
It's interesting, too, that they get John Hurt to basically collude with the front of the train, so it's the back and the front working together, even though, really, John Hurt should have his sympathies with the people in the back, and he's not really working for them. And to me, it echoes in real life how we're kind of trained to tear each other down instead of looking at larger problems or other classes, you know?
Yeah, I like the idea that all the characters in this movie, especially Curtis and Mason, are just followers who are following two sides that are equally corrupt.
Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of lackeys that are doing the same thing. They're not questioning, they're not thinking, they're just like shadows. They'll follow whoever is important in front of them, like Edgar, who, I mean, great character. I love watching him, but whatever Curtis does, he is going to be right there following.
Yeah. And he never stops to question it, even in the face of his own death. I mean, It's ultimately his downfall because he's so, like, he believes that Curtis is going to come back for him, and Curtis just completely doesn't.
Yep, keeps on trucking.
No, ultimately, the people who make change are Song and his daughter, who follow nothing.
Yeah, and whose idea was...
out of here.
Yeah, that was a big idea. Why don't we just leave the front of the train alone and leave? If they go with that, it probably would have turned out a little better.
As usual, trust the junkies. But going back to the ending in this movie with the idea of the front and back of the train working together, what I love about that third act is it essentially does the exact same thing The Matrix Reloaded tried to do with the architect, but it actually works. This is the good way of having the movie you just watched completely deconstructed in front of you at the end.
Because
it doesn't make you feel like you're in any way cheated or that you were...
Well,
you feel like you weren't watching what you thought you were watching, but not in a bad way.
Right, like everything that came before it isn't a waste. It's not like, oh, this was just filler to get to this twist. This is, oh, this recontextualizes everything. I can rewatch this and get more out of it now.
Yeah, well, I think the reason for that is that for a lot of the movie, you're kind of almost left in the dark as to what his true intentions were. And it doesn't feel like you're utterly convinced that, no, this was just this one thing and it was only this one thing. You could tell that something else was there, but you just couldn't quite put your finger on what it was until this complete reinvention of the premise happened.
Well, Gilliam does tell him to immediately kill Wilford the second he sees him. So you do have kind of an invisible character arc there that really plays well upon rewatching. I like the idea of having a character have a beginning, middle, and end that's completely different whenever you watch it after watching the full movie.
That was one of the neat things. Like, I've had the movie on the background today, and I was paying attention to different parts, and if you watch the characters, you realize they're completely different the second time around.
Yeah.
Like, your interpretation of the guy is 100% off base the first time you watch the movie. Pretty much any character.
John Hurt has a secret that completely turns him around. Chris Evans has a secret that completely turns him around. The only ones really are like Edgar, I don't think is really different upon rewatching because ultimately he's still the same. He's not in on what's actually going on, and
his character arc is he died.
Yeah, pretty much.
So a lot of the followers maybe didn't have much. Like Mason, not so much. Edgar, not so much.
Octavia Spencer got to kick some ass.
That's true. Exciting. I like how everyone involved in like a Marvel franchise is using their new star status to jump into small movies. Like Sam Worthington did Avatar, and he's like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna do every big action film I can get my hands on," and now he's just gone. Like, Terminator Salvation, a couple other big ones, and vanished. Clash of the Titans, whatever, gone. These guys are all like, "Okay, how do I get into Rush? I know, I'll become Thor, then star in the Avengers." It's a very odd route, but I like how the results are turning out.
become Thor. Amazing career path.
It's true.
I like the idea of Captain America being a stepping stone to somebody's career. It's like, first I'll be the first Avenger, then I'm gonna eat that baby.
I know how to get those sweet meats.
And by the way, I completely view this film as what the Japanese interpret Captain America to be. A cannibalistic monster who bails on his friends.
It makes a certain amount of sense.
Asian babies.
You just described Captain America, though.
Yeah.
That's not fair.
Yeah,
He's not wearing enough red, white, and blue. But if you look at the movie, it's very international, which I thought was kind of cool. Like,
yeah.
Joon-ho Bong comes into America, and he literally brings his diversity with him. Like, nope, everyone in the film is going to be from different spots. Even some of the non-speaking roles were cast from, like, Hungarians and other different nationalities that you wouldn't guess. Just to give that feel that this train represents everybody.
Yeah.
And in the end, it's kind of...
Tilda Swinton?
Yeah. And it's kind of ironic, too, in the end, the big American action star who does his thing and just rampages to the front of the train, turns out he's not helping that much by just running through and killing everything.
Metaphor.
Yeah, it's not exactly subtle, but who cares? It gets the point across.
And could you imagine if Snowpiercer was made here and everybody was just white? Would not have gotten the idea that this is the world, this running around in a circle across it all.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a couple dudes from California.
No, you'd have some diversity. You'd have like an old couple from Idaho. They would die, but they'd be there.
You'd have the one black guy who survived the apocalypse.
It's T-Dog. He was the greatest of all of us.
It is kind of weird how
clutching that Bible.
It is kind of weird how this film kind of contextualizes the idea of a post-apocalyptic setting, but actually does it in a way that's way more realistic than anything you actually see done here in, like, the States. Because it is actually a very good point. Like, it does represent the entirety of the world, as opposed to this one group in Georgia.
Yeah, I always love how in the apocalypse, only a couple of white dudes from America survive.
Well, it's again, I think this goes back to Aesop fable logic. How would you get so many varieties of people on a train? Like, if the end of the world happened, do you think, like, oh, the train was made in South Korea? It'd be filled with South Koreans. But no, it's got a little bit of everyone. And obviously that doesn't make a lot of logistical sense. But I think it makes story sense. Like, they're trying to say something about, the world.
To be fair, all those people could have just been from New Jersey.
The melting pot, pour it in.
I do love, and this is something you especially see in the extras, just how genuinely impoverished everyone in this movie looks.
They did a good job with the grit.
You see a one-armed guy covered in dirt running down a train with a torch. The greatest image I've ever seen.
Beautiful.
Let's talk about that scene for a little bit, because I don't know, that to me stands out more than anything else in the film. That big attack sequence in the back and forth.
One of the weirdest things that's ever been put on.
The most anime live-action thing I think I've ever seen.
Happy New Year!
Yeah, they're also reverential. They all have to respect those traditions, even though it makes no sense. The guy on the ground dying when he's still going, Happy New Year! The brilliant little thing of, oh, okay, we're on a train that goes at a constant speed, so we mark holidays by landmarks. Like, okay, we're passing this bridge, it must be New Year's. That's the only clock you need.
Genius.
There's like no other clocks on the train, and they're not, most of the train cars don't even have windows, so you can't see the passage of time or anything, and all of a sudden, oh, it's New Year's, woo! Okay, back to killing.
Again, I could have just spent, I could have watched an entire series that was just about that universe. All its little complexities.
And I love the way they have the battle constructed, because at first, it seems like a pretty even fight. Then the higher-ups turn off the lights and they have night vision, so they've got their technology to aid them. Makes sense. The higher-ups have cool, sweet electronic toys. But then the primitives basically come back with fucking torches and even the odds with that. Like, just human ingenuity to destroy finds a way.
Didn't you have that horrifying twist near the end where you realize, oh, bullets actually aren't extinct?
Yeah, not all of them.
I was disappointed that that's where that scene was going, and the front of the train just wasn't just being really nice and giving them treats.
The nice version of Snowpiercer.
Eggs for everybody.
Hey, you have an egg. We were just about to send these to the back of the train because guys don't get them that often.
I love how blasé the front of the train is that they're being invaded.
Not again.
And I like how they also covered all the angles for what the chronology of the train was. Like, there have been several rebellions attempted. There have been several escapes attempted, all of them ending horribly and never getting as far as Curtis's.
Yeah, I like the little bit of history behind each one. Like, to the people in the back of the train, this is a big deal. Like, it's reverential to talk about the different rebellions and how far they made, how many trains up. Whereas in the front of the train, it's like, they're looked down on, they're the terrorists, they tell stories to their children about how bad these people are. Just the completely different viewpoints. One side, you're a freedom fighter, the other side, you're a terrorist.
Yeah.
And to the rest of us, you're the Human Torch.
Okay.
Well, being awesome, Chris Evans.
I love Sunshine. Box Office Pulp recommends Sunshine.
Cellular. Other movies he's been in.
I've never actually seen Cellular. Was that alright?
I have
No.
no idea.
Nah, it didn't look like it. Let's not talk about Cellular. It is a silly film.
And anyway, Mike, you've been especially quiet this episode. How does this film relate to Scott Pilgrim?
Go on.
Well,
Yes.
everyone died at the end of Scott Pilgrim as well.
Oh.
Wallace killed them all. Oh God, I've got to help Scott cover up all these murders. It's like you're all gonna die now.
You make him sound like Doc Brown.
I killed it. Wait for the Doc Brown conversation.
Yep. That's going on the editing room floor. Oh boy. Later, you say there.
You're falling flat comments, but everybody else gets to stay in. Yeah, you get to always look like a genius.
I'm the Flex Killington. Here's my jokes. They're great.
Well, you are an island.
I'm gonna add a laugh track to mine to make it look like you guys guffawed. Oh, you're so funny. I wish I was more like Douglas.
Talk more about fables, Cody.
My fable talk is used up. Withered out.
Before we go too far down this rabbit hole, can we talk for a minute about Tilda Swinton in this movie?
And what an
amazing performance.
What an odd performance. It made it even more confusing by the fact that it was originally written for a man. Like, wasn't it John C. Reilly or something was supposed to have the role? Just imagine the film if he was in her spot.
Why you got a shoe on your head? That's crazy.
It completely accidentally made the film way more interesting to have that character appear.
It's like I wasn't sure what the hell Tilda Swinton was doing until she called the passengers hooligans. It's like, oh, now I get it.
She's clueless.
It's like she's just doing future Thatcher.
That's probably the best way to describe it, yeah. I think they even kind of mentioned that in, like, they've got a character section on the Blu-ray special features, and the director made the same comment, like, I was starting to think of political figures, and that's where the inspiration came from.
Like, what a weird mishmash that character is. Like, she carries herself as if she's part of the upper crust, and yet she has this weird, awkward, homeless lady way of carrying herself. The big golden tooth. It's like she's a hobo playing at being a member of high society.
And she's delusional enough to believe it. In her own words, she is a hat, everyone else is a shoe. God, I love that scene so much. That little speech was just fantastic.
It's like I was disappointed when she was killed off halfway through the movie. I wanted her to have an action redemption like Johnny Depp in Once Upon a Time in Mexico.
She doesn't skull fuck anyone.
Yet at the same time, you totally get why they kill her off because there's no logical reason for them to actually keep trust. Like I fully expected them to keep her on, even after the inevitable betrayal, and then Chris Evans turns around, puts the gun out, and just boom.
Yeah, I love how this movie just does not fuck around.
No.
Well, it goes with the kind of violent tone shifts in the film. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's dark, and, I mean, as we move to the front of the train, we lose a lot of the characters that make things more lively. So it works with that, because you have to drop her at a certain point, or else you've got someone who's kind of entertaining to watch at the end, when you should be focusing on the fact that there's, a child laborer stuck inside the machine parts.
Yeah. Even like Octavia Spencer, like it would have ruined it if she would have, gotten to the front of the train and saw her or been reunited with her child. It's like, no, things have to be insanely grim for all of that to work.
That's right. It's
there
the
have
only
to be
way.
as few survivors as possible, and there's only 3 that make it out of the entire army, essentially, that Curtis rounds up.
By the way, how amazing is the image of seeing a high society white woman come to the back of the train and steal a crying black child? It's like, wow, they're just putting all the cards on the table here.
I like how on Front Street Snowpiercer is. Like, it gives no bones about it being a class war, socio-economical kind of film.
See, I feel that when it comes to allegory, different genres have different strength. It's like, horror, I believe, works best whenever it's just metaphor and allegory. But I feel like science fiction works best when it's just upfront about what it's about. Because with something like horror, you kind of have to mask things. You have to have, ideas be like walking anthropomorphisms of things people are afraid of. Whereas with science fiction, you have the opportunity to put things you see every day into a completely different setting, so you don't have to mask it in metaphor. It's like, the best example I can think of is X-Men. It's like, what if there was a world where everyone who was different was killed by robots in the middle of the street? It's like, you don't have to mask it into 30 layers of metaphor and allegory. You can just change the setting just slightly to have your point just right there.
Yeah, as long as you keep things moving and keep things interesting, you can do the most simplistic, in-your-face theme imaginable and still have it seem smart.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to really dig deep in order to tell a good story. Like, sometimes all you need is just a really obvious premise, and just make it, just tell it in a world that's interesting. Like, there's just a lot of science fiction is actually based around that exact premise, in that it's not deep at all. It's not like this big conspiracy-like thing where...
Watch any episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, you don't need subtext if your text is strong enough.
It's like, what if the Cold War was happening on Mars?
Doodle-doo, doodle-doo, doodle-doo.
Look at Star Trek Into Darkness. That was just the Iraq War.
Star Trek Into Darkness was a sledgehammer over your head. I can't believe people missed that at all.
What are you talking about? That was just a dumb action movie that wasn't about anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like how people call Snowpiercer.
Speaking of which, it might be time for It Came from Internet Movie Database.
Oh, God. I listened to the last episode. This was where things went off the rails.
It was a doozy.
It always goes off the rails.
First entry.
To the first.
From Tumis_Gimli. Title, Tilda Swinton, ellipses. What was she thinking?
Explained.
Saw this movie last night. I thought it was fine as a straight-up action movie. But by God, what was Tilda Swinton thinking when acting out this performance? What planet was that accent supposed to be from? How was her performance supposed to come across? Funny?
What's a Scottish accent?
Kind of out of place in a film with cannibalism, axe murder, freezing a guy's arm off, etc. Threatening? Don't make me laugh. Scary? Crazy? I know she's a great actress. I haven't seen that many of her movies, but she's incredible and we need to talk about Kevin. Oh, well, not the one I would have picked, but hey, alright. Good choice.
You went with Constantine.
But maybe. But what mushrooms did she have for breakfast on set? She was like a cartoon character out of a completely different movie. This combined with the equally out of place school scene really dragged this movie down for me.
really out of place. He doesn't understand differing tones, does he?
Also, how does the aquarium scene line up with everything else?
It does. Totally does. You forget this is a straight-up action film. It's not funny in any way.
It actually plays to one of the greatest strengths of the movie, which is that it's a complete hodgepodge.
Yeah.
It is a Frankenstein of a movie.
To be honest, I really laughed when he said babies taste best. I thought that was hilarious. I didn't.
How could you not?
I assumed everyone laughed at that, but I'm not sure.
I mean, I just thought, finally, proof, because Captain America said it.
Now it's canon. Bring me a cookbook.
Every baby you eat is a bullet in the barrel of your best man.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Alright, I think that closes our first comment section. Moving on to the second thread. Hard-hitting stuff. This is from Darth Criticus, asking, protein blocks. I honestly didn't understand why they were so shocked about the contents of the blocks. I doubt people would be so picky living in hellish post-apocalyptic conditions for 17 years. Hell, there are places today where insects are a normal part of people's diets.
So that guy's saying he would love to eat ground-up insects every day of his life.
Grasshoppers look delicious. If you can make my Jell-O, instead of having little pineapple chunks floating around in it, have, like, cockroaches, I'm game. If that is what you can serve me for the rest of my life, let's do this.
To be fair, that is a delicacy in certain parts of the world.
Yeah.
Isn't the point, like, they're eating ground-up grasshoppers and they're eating gourmet food?
No,
That
it's
dude
not the
just
point at all.
completely missed the point of the plot.
Again, they're looking at it very literally, which is the problem. Yeah. Next, the 7 frozen figures from Mims Youthgood. The 7 who jumped off and froze, how did they open the door? Did I miss that somehow?
Didn't they explain it? They opened the door and because that happened, they welded it shut?
Yes.
Okay,
The first response is, yeah, I think you did.
That was
Mystery fucking solved.
That was a mystery. That was a tough question. Glad we got the experts.
I don't like that guy's response. It's not helpful. He could have said what we just said.
He could have explained it more. He got condescending. That's all right.
You should respond right now, Cody.
Ooh, oh, no. Because I found the first one saying, people don't get it. These are my favorite because you just know with a title like that, it's going to be pretentious. Let's see what Rusuk044 has to say.
Open the podcast with us.
I hate sounding like a know-it-all or a snob, which is like trying to say you're going to be a snob. That's what I always do.
And I'm not racist, but many of the people watching it don't understand what an allegory is. The movie doesn't have to be realistic. Oh god, I wrote this. It isn't even supposed to be. Everything in the film was symbolic. There are many plot holes if you look at it as a straightforward movie, but it is not. Every single car, every single character, the engine, the school, the cockroach machine, it was all symbolic. Stole from IMDb, you son of a bitch.
It wasn't supposed to be realistic. Well, fuck me. The tables have been turned.
IMDb.
You are the pretentious one.
It's true. Man.
I have no memory of writing this.
Apparently, today I learned I'm RussOK044.
I am my own worst enemy.
Oh,
It to me.
Well, alright then. I have judged a book by its cover and been proven a fool.
No, you've been proven to be the cover.
Oh, Zing, I will give you that one, sir. Well, I don't know if I can do any better than that. Okay, let's try and sneak out of here.
Cut that out.
Let's just...
The next forum, Cody.
Questions, ellipses. That's all I'm left with. From Ben Lightenment. Really, I was looking forward to this. All I'd heard was praise after praise saying how good it was, but, ellipses, it wasn't. In my opinion, it was an overly pretentious, sledgehammer subtle, allegorical tale with way too many weird happenings for me to take seriously. For instance, 1. Why did no one ever hear Gilliam on the phone to Wilford? I mean, ellipses, they are forced to do population control, so it must be pretty busy in there, and not one person ever heard him? 2. Who are the Balaclava X-Men? Balaclava, face mask. It's so hard to pronounce. Is there really a train car full of them just waiting for a revolution? Why do they have time dipping their axes into fish?
I'll give him that one, but...
No one understands. 3, following on from that, if the revolution was meant to end in that car at that time, why didn't they just break out the guns then? 4, people really forgive Curtis for eating babies? Really? 5.
It's a different time, man.
Babies, man. Like caviar.
Oh, yeah. Fucking cheese, crackers, and babies.
Goes down smooth. 5. Who the hell were the mostly silent, ambiguously gay, but really quite overtly gay bodyguard Terminator guys?
What?
Why was that guy so hard to kill? Why was he dead set on going after the girl all the time?
What?
Can you repeat that or something?
Ambiguously gay guard guys.
Who the hell were the mostly silent, ambiguously gay, but really quite overtly gay bodyguard Terminator guys?
What?
You can't be both. Is that like sucking dick and going, I'm not gay?
God, I hate the taste of this.
This is terrible.
I'm just going to try 3 more before I make up my mind if these are good or not. I don't know. I don't have answers for you, man. 6. How come none of them picked up on the fact something weird was going on when they found out the secret messages were coming from, quotation marks, someone else? 7. What happened to Andy? What was the weird pot he got in before the engine? Apparently I've been drinking. What was the weird pod he got into in the engine room when it was all shutting down?
I mean, is that really a question? He got into the engine.
He got into the engine. Why though?
Work on shit. Like, why does... Is there a mystery there?
There were 2 question marks in that question. So yes.
So it's a big mystery.
Yes. And 8. Why did the Yellow Jacket woman measure the chronol/C4 bomb? What the hell was that about? Really, I had high hopes for this film. Really high, given all the good reviews. But in the end, I was just incredibly disappointed. Not to mention the terribly predictable plot. Anyone who didn't get where it was going as soon as the carefully balanced ecosystem that must be maintained was mentioned in the aquarium is just silly.
To be fair, I did guess the twist way before that scene.
Ooh. I feel like Ben Lightenment needs to meet our friend Russ OK044, a.k.a. Flex Killington,
Cody.
a.k.a. Cody, before his memory loss.
AKA Kermit.
I'm sorry, he just named everything that was awesome about the movie.
Yeah.
Like, he just explained why it was a good movie.
I don't know, man. If people are measuring C4 in my train, they get the hell off. But the biggest, hardest hitting question from Dor Justin. So it was cold enough to freeze that guy's arm off, ellipses, but warm enough that people could now survive outside. I was looking through posts and I didn't see anyone mention this, so I figured I would bring it up and see what others think. Even if at that altitude and that temperature in that part of the world it was in fact cold enough to freeze someone's arm under the current conditions, the scene makes the point that people on the train are aware of the outside temperatures. They were so aware of the temperatures that they knew precisely how long it would take for his arm to freeze. That means at different altitudes and in different parts of the world, they must also be aware of the temperature. Being that it was safe to go outside at the end, then it means at least certain people on board knew this. I guess the obvious answer is Wilford kept his information to himself, and a select few were content with train life, and the ability to measure outside temperatures was first-class exclusive. However, Wilford, while passing along all the secrets of how to maintain control of the train to Curtis, never once filled him in on this piece of information, despite being willing.
Spend all this time writing this shit, but doesn't know on a fucking hot summer day if you hold your hand outside of a fucking car, it's gonna be cold. You stupid fuck! How do you get outside your house during the day? You just stand. How do I open this door? You dumb fuck! Die! Just die!
Is there more?
Willing to divulge just about everything else. In fact, it felt as if he really still believed the only place that was safe was on board the train based on things he said. Too long didn't read. If they knew how cold it was outside so they could precisely freeze someone's arm, shouldn't they know how cold it was in areas that are currently habitable?
I love the dark conspiracy waves.
An MB? Anaconda malt liquor gives you what?
He spent a week writing.
He fucking had graphs, fucking red wire going from every fucking photograph, figuring this shit. He broke the goddamn movie wide open. He figured it out. He's smarter than everybody goddamn else on the fucking planet, even the director. He knows more.
We should start with this. Mike would have been all on board the entire podcast.
Fucking a goddamn star child. I woke up now.
Oh,
You
God.
so much.
I fear we have awakened a giant.
Let's redo the episode.
God, no. I'm scared for my life, podcast listeners.
Let's end this. Let's end this thing before Mike kills us all.
That's a wrap, everyone. That has been Snowpiercer. I've been Cody.
I've been James.
Fuck you. You were MB and you were Mike. Anyways, check out the rest of our podcast at... I'm not sure I want to go with this ending. It's terrible. BoxOfficePulp.blogspot.com. We're also on iTunes and Tumblr. There's a Facebook page no one goes to. Be the first.
Facebook.com/BoxOfficePulp. If you like this show, God knows why, and if you like some of the other fine shows on the Pulp Podcast Network, visit pulppodcastnetwork.wordpress.com.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey.
Good night, everybody.
And like that, he's gone.
I thought we were going into a sex joke. Are you trying to fuck me?
I'd fuck me.
I'd fuck all of you.
Aw, that's real nice. You promised, though.
Babies taste best.
Mm-mm.
I bet they do. I bet they do.
No one's even arguing that. Maybe that's why that one guy was mad. Like, it's not surprising. The plot is straightforward. We all know babies are delicious.
I made this bomb so we can get out of this train and get some more goddamn babies.
We're gonna find them. Polar bear babies, human babies, no babies off limit.
It's gonna be really awkward whenever they wander into the snow for a couple of hours, then just happen upon a thriving human civilization.
Yo, bros, we've been here a while. How you doing?
It's like he just kidnapped all those people.
I have a feeling like
through the Alps.
Yeah, like the rest of humanity never figured out like bomb shelters or like indoor heating.
Indoor heating. See, now you're taking it too literally, Cody.
That's right. I'm not looking at this like Aesop's Fables. Russ OK044 would be very disappointed in me.
Yeah, stop being that pretentious snob we all know you are.
That's what I am. That's the movie.
It's a long after credits scene, isn't it?
Yeah.